Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with a severe weather outlook and discussion. This recorded on May 12th, 2023, on 10:40 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot of things to jump into today, so let's go and jump straight into everything. So for today, we have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for severe storms out across the north central plains here. This runs from just the northern tip of Missouri back in through portions of Nebraska and far southern South Dakota, with a very large slight risk, level 2 out of 5, all the way down to the Texas-Mexico border, with a marginal level 1 out of 5 risk all the way to near Memphis, Tennessee, back through portions of really most of central Iowa, and back into South Dakota and into Oklahoma. Even far southeastern New Mexico has that marginal risk today. For tomorrow's risk, we do have a level 2 out of 5 in two areas. One in portions of southern Texas with a large marginal risk surrounding that, and another slight risk, this including places like Des Moines, Iowa, through portions of Illinois with a rather skinny marginal risk surrounding that. In our day 3 threat, we have another level 2 out of 5 slight risk for portions of Indiana, Illinois, into portions of southwestern Ohio and Kentucky with a marginal risk for severe storms surrounding that. For today's more specific threats, we have a 5% tornado risk stretching from just near Kansas City and Omaha, Nebraska, with a larger 2% region, including places like Oklahoma City to near Enid, Oklahoma, Springfield, Missouri, and Sioux Falls. And then for the hail probability today, 30% hail risk out across that enhanced risk area, large 15 area for wind or for hail, and same for the damaging wind threat. For tomorrow, we have a 5% tornado risk out across portions of the slight risk area, Cedar Rapids to near Peoria, Illinois, 2% risk surrounding that, and another risk for severe storms and tornadoes tomorrow across portions of near San Antonio, Texas, all the way down to Brownsville and Corpus Christi tomorrow. And then also the damaging wind, large hail threat, both 15% risks for those days as well. So lots of severe weather upcoming over the next several days. So let's go ahead and jump into the more detailed specifics. So taking a wide look across the United States right now, we notice that there is a very broad upper level system out across and just moving out of the Colorado area and moving into the central plains at this very moment in time. This is actually what's going to be responsible for the severe weather threat over the next several days, especially out across the plains into the Ohio Valley throughout the next couple of days. Now, again, right now, looking at the flow around this area, mostly southerly winds out across most of the warm sector right now and into the plains. This means that we have a large fetch of Gulf moisture being ejected northward. We're looking here at the mid-level water vapor. Now, there is some dry air that is actually present in the mid-levels out across the southern portion of Texas and in back to the Gulf of Mexico. So what this is actually doing is this is drawing up that somewhat drier air in the mid-levels, and this is actually helping to steepen the lapse rates aloft, and that leads to an increased hail potential down there. So that's why we have the more significant hail potential out across the enhanced risk area for today, as well as this upper level system providing ample lift and shear for supercells and tornadoes to mature. And of course, this will be moving eastward over the next several days, bringing that lifting mechanism further eastward, leading to an increased threat in severe weather potential. So now taking a look here at the dew point temperatures out across this region, you notice that there is lower dew points out across where this area of low pressure is. Again, that dry air kind of being fetched around, setting up much more of a dry line type future. But we notice very, very moist environment further off towards the east with dew points in the 70s out across the Dallas area, dew points in the upper 60s out to Kansas City, and even in the upper 60s out there in St. Louis today. Now, of course, these dew point temperatures will come down a bit as we start to get mixing throughout the day today. But with this upper level system providing enough lift in the atmosphere as it ejects slowly off towards the east and northeast, that should set up a very favorable corridor for severe weather potential. Looking here at the 500 millibar heights, we notice that there is a closed contour, a closed height center here just to the east of Denver, moving out into the central high plains. And this is actually that upper level low that we were just talking about that you saw on the water vapor satellite imagery. Now, with this being an upper level low, of course, this also means that we have colder temperatures near the center of this area of low pressure. So if we actually throw on the day one risk again, overlaid with those height contours, we notice that again, that upper level low is centered right here, moving into the risk area today. And with this being the case, this upper level low, colder temperatures aloft, meaning we have the potential for more substantial hail risk today, which is consequently why we have that 30 hail risk that is in this general vicinity. So as this upper level low approaches, it's just going to be sitting here. It's not really moving fast or anything like that. So as plenty of time to just sit here, crank those colder temperatures aloft over the risk region today, and that is going to pave the way for a more substantial hail risk, especially out across the northern mode today. Now looking here at the 500 millibar winds coming off the Mesoanalysis, we also notice that generally speaking, 500 millibar winds, it's not a super high amplitude trough. There's not, 100 knot flow aloft, but still a very respectful, nearly about 55 knots, generally about 50 to 55 knots of flow. You got that 56, almost 57 mile per hour wind aloft there. That is certainly enough to support the threat for rotating thunderstorms and enough mid-level shear to support significant ventilation aloft, helping to reduce the thunderstorms just raining into their own updrafts. So this definitely supports the idea of the potential for an organized threat for severe storms as this ejects further off towards the east. And even up here more towards the risk area towards the north, this is still on the lower end of the magnitude, but you do notice that these will continue to spread off towards the north as we progress throughout the day, as this main center of the trough begins to eject and you start to get the amplification of the northern part, allowing for those winds aloft to increase. And looking here at the 500 millibar vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere at about 18,400 feet above sea level, we notice that there is this area of spin right here, and you can very clearly see it as we were just talking about, kind of actually where my cursor is right now. So generally speaking, we have this area of spin in the atmosphere that will lead to an increase in thunderstorm potential as we progress throughout the rest of the day. Let's see what the models have to say about that. This is the HRRR mixed layer instability, basically just a measure of how explosive the environment is to support significant thunderstorms. And basically what we're actually noticing is that actually we back this up a little bit here. We notice that there is sufficient mixed layer instability over about 1,500 in some cases. A lot of instability stockpiled down to the south, over 4,000 Cape down there south of Dallas. That's, again, generally on the high end, but for that region this time of the year, that's not unprecedented. But certainly with respectful 1,500 to about 2,000 mixed layer Cape across this area, you generally have an environment that is more than unstable to support thunderstorms. And with a significant lifting source just a mere little while away, which is that upper level low, that definitely will help to induce thunderstorm initiation. And given the large amount of instability in this area, these thunderstorms could quickly go severe. The other thing to look here is the 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity. This also coming off the HRRR forecast today. And we notice that instability, or I'm sorry, not instability, but the storm relative helicity in the 0 to 3 kilometer layer isn't especially deep. And that's because, again, that 500 millibar layer of the atmosphere, this is not a big, deep digging trough. However, it is still something to be noteful, and certainly still some respectful values here, close to about 200 in some cases over there, just to the northeast of or northwest of Des Moines, Iowa. And those numbers will increase as we head throughout the evening. As we get to midnight, these values now increase to over 200 meters squared per second squared, which is certainly sufficient for rotating updrafts and supercells. Downside is you have less instability, but there still will be some, especially as we head into the evening. And with a source of lift, I do think that these storms will possess some type of tornado risk as we progress throughout the rest of today. But what about the convective mode? Convective mode today is going to be a little bit of an issue. This is the NAM 3 kilometer, and we notice that generally speaking, there's not a lot of discrete supercells in the environment for tomorrow or for today going into tomorrow. You notice that initially we end up with a pretty linear mode, maybe some broken line segments evolve in here with some attendant tornado risk. We notice also down to the south, you've got a messy linear mode of storms as well, with an attendant threat for damaging winds and large hail. But as we progress throughout the rest of the evening, this very quickly develops into a linear mode of severe weather, with the center of low pressure being somewhere over here, kind of to the north of Kearney, Nebraska, and to the southwest of Sioux Falls. And again, this is a pretty linear signal right here. So that means that the tornado threat would be lower, at least the significant tornado threat would be lower, but there still could be these embedded supercells or QLCS tornadoes that are so often hard to warn for. But damaging winds and large hail become the primary threat, especially the damaging wind threat. I think later tonight becomes more of the greatest concern, with this transitioning more into a linear mode after the sun begins to set here. And that's when I think we start to see that increase in the wind damage potential instead of the tornado potential. And looking here at the HRRR, it is very similar on the idea. However, going out to midnight, we notice that it is a little bit of a different story. We still have that QLCS down to the south here, large hail damaging winds. However, further towards the north, there are more of a broken line segment-ish of storms, maybe some multi-cell clusters embedded in here. So this would pose maybe a more tornado potential, more of a significant tornado potential as we head throughout the evening. However, I do think that this is going to transition into a linear mode, and certainly any storm interactions are going to potentially be detrimental to the overall tornado threat. So not really seeing a super high-end risk for tornadoes today, but nonetheless, there is still that threat to see an isolated tornado or two, especially with any more of the discrete elements. And then I think as we transition into the overnight hours, we start to develop and take on more of that overall damaging wind threat. And then as we head throughout the day tomorrow, from early overnight into the late evening part of tomorrow, we notice that generally what happens is we get multiple rounds of storms develop out here in Texas and Oklahoma with that attendant damaging wind, large hail potential. And then more storms begin to form tomorrow around dark here, especially across portions of Iowa. Even into central Illinois, some of these more discrete elements will need to be watched for any attendant tornado potential. And then eventually, as we progress throughout the late overnight hours, this all becomes more of a linear line segment with damaging winds and large hail, and potentially some embedded tornadoes being a threat in there, all the way from really just about to the east of Des Moines, Iowa, along the Interstate 80 corridor, all the way down to St. Louis, and even all the way down to Louisville, Kentucky, with some of that attendant damaging wind, large hail, maybe again some of those embedded tornado potential as well. And then even going out even late tomorrow night across the really the far southern plains here, Texas, Oklahoma, again some semi-discrete elements in here with some attendant damaging wind, large hail, and isolated tornado threat. Maybe even some strong to severe storms out here in portions of Mississippi and Alabama. I wouldn't completely rule that out. We'll actually look at the instability that is projected to be here at this particular time. We'll actually go down to 11 tomorrow night. And there's going to be a decent amount of mixed layer instability in this area. We're looking at a pretty respectful about 1,400. And along this line, just to the north of Nashville, about 2,200. And so for 11 o'clock at night, that is pretty substantial. So there definitely is an attendant damaging wind, large hail threat with some of those storms tomorrow. As you look at the storm alert of helicity at this time, and there's not really much, so the tornado potential probably is going to be a lot lower, especially because you notice that the greatest instability value is going to be further up towards the north tomorrow, but definitely could still see, damaging winds and large hail in this overall area tomorrow evening. So Mississippi into northern Alabama, especially northeastern Mississippi, northwestern Alabama, needs to be on alert for some potential severe storms late tomorrow night. Again, only hail and wind being the primary threats here, and still there is some shear for these storms to work with out across portions of Oklahoma and into Texas tomorrow, for the potential for maybe a few isolated tornadoes even continuing into the late evening hours. So we have a lot to watch over the next several days. One other thing that we'll be watching over the next several days is this storm system south of the Aleutian Islands currently. This broad upper level system will be gradually kind of cutting off, moving south, and we notice that there is a large fetch of moisture that will be stretching and moving all the way into the western coast of the U.S. over the next several days. So we'll see if that has any effect on the weather pattern during the next about 7 to 10 days or so, but we're still pretty far ways out from that. There's also yet another storm system out across the far western portions of the Pacific right now, well to the north and west of Hawaii at this point. We're watching to see if this is also any threat, but I do expect the pattern to remain relatively active as we progress throughout the rest of May with these storm systems that will be moving out, and even portions of Canada might get on some of the severe weather action as well as we start to get the jet stream to head a little bit further towards the north as we progress throughout the rest of May and into the opening months of June. So that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Take care, everyone. Stay safe out there in this world. God bless, and I'll talk to you guys again some more over the next several days.